My dear students, I'm Dr. Terrence Mukhia from Salesian College, Sonada. Today I would like to deliver a lecture on Beowulf. I'll be dividing my lecture into two parts. This lecture is intended for the first year English honors of second semester, course 4. Let me go ahead with part 1. Beowulf is an epic, and it is the first great work of national literature. However, whether it is an epic or not is a matter of debate. Like the date and place of its composition is a matter of debate. The poem is found in the manuscript collected by Sir Robert Cotton and is now in the British Museum. Burnt in state, it somehow survived Henry VIII's destruction of the monasteries 200 years earlier. Some scholars opine that it was composed in Germany and was brought to England by the invading Germans. Others designate England as the place of composition and the Yorkshire coast as the scene of the story. Some opine Beowulf was composed in Old English, probably in Northumbria in northeast England, somewhere between the years 750. The contention seems an expression of national prejudice, as many opine. It was probably composed in Schleswig and brought over to England about the close of the 5th century and was retouched and edited by a Christian poet about the year 1000. What happened to the poem for the next 800 years is still a matter of conjecture. It was first published at Copenhagen in 1815. Now let me give you an overview of the characters in this particular work. Beowulf. He was a Goth, son of Ecgtheow and nephew of Hygelac, king of the Goths. Brecca, chief of a tribe called Brondings and a friend of Beowulf. Grendel, a man-eating monster who lives at the bottom of a foul mere or mountain lake. He has a mother. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, builder of the great hall Herod. Unferth, one of the Hrothgar's courtiers, who is reputed to be a skilled warrior. Weldho, Hrothgar's wife. She is the queen of the Danes. There is also a person called Wiglaf. Wiglaf is a great warrior, one of Beowulf's select band, and very faithful to Beowulf. The theme, setting and characters of the poem are all Scandinavian. They have nothing to do with the island of Great Britain and the English. There is not a single word about England in the poem, nor is there the slightest hint that the poet or poets who composed it knew anything of such a people as the English in Britain. All the characters are of the continent: Danes, the Geats, and the Frisians. Beowulf, the hero of the poem himself, is a Goth or Geat. The scene is laid in the Danish island of Sealand and in South Sweden, the country of Goths. With all these facts in view, it is difficult to think that the poem was composed in England. After the Angles and Saxons had crossed over to England at the end of the 5th century. Beowulf opens with a short account of the victorious Danish king Scyld. I am reading few lines from the prologue translated by Burton Raffel. Hear me, we have heard of Danish heroes, ancient kings, and the glory they got, for themselves swinging mighty swords. How Scyld made slaves of soldiers from every land, crowds of captives had beaten into terror. He who travelled to Denmark alone, an abandoned child, but changed his own fate, lived to be rich and much. Let me read from the translation of John Leslie Howe. Lo, the spear Danes glory through splendid achievements. The folk kings' former fame we have heard of. How princes displayed then their prowess in battle. Of Scyld the shifting from shithers in numbers, from many a people their meat benches store. Thus we find Beowulf opening with a short account of Danish king Scyld's shifting. We find that his dead body was placed on a ship, piled up with arms and treasure. The ship passes out to the sea, and none knew what happened to it. The reigns of Shil's son and grandson, Beowulf and Halfdan, are briefly described. Hrothgar was a son of Halfdan, and with him, the story of Beowulf, the hero of the poem, begins. In his old age, Hrothgar builds a splendid hall, Heorot, where the kings and his thanes gathered nightly to feast and to listen to the songs of his gleemen. However, his happiness is short-lived. It is destroyed by the monster Grendel. And this is how Grendel has been described. Let me read few lines from various translations. Burton Raffel begins his translation of the monster Grendel in this way. A powerful monster living down in the darkness growled in pain, impatient, as day after day the music rang, loud in that hall, the harps rejoicing, call and poets' clear songs sung of the ancient beginnings of us all, recalling the Almighty making the earth shaping these beautiful plains marked off by oceans, then proudly setting the sun and moon to glow across the land and light it. The corners of the earth were made lovely with trees, and leaves made quick with life with each of the nations who now move on its face. And then, as now warriors sang of their pleasure, so Hrothgar's men lived happy in the hall, till the monster stirred, that demon, that fiend Grendel, who haunted the moors, the wild marshes, and made his home in a hell. Not hell, but earth. Let me read few lines from the translation by John Leslie Hall. Grendel the murderer has been described like this. When the sun was sunken, he set out to visit the lofty hall building, how the ring dens had used it for beds and benches when the banquet was over. Then he found there reposing many a noble asleep after supper. Sorrow the heroes, misery knew not. The monster evil, greedy and cruel, tarried but little, fell and frantic, and forced from their slumbers 30 of 10 men. Then he departed, leaping and laughing. Thus we see Grendel attacking the hall and devouring as many as 30 warriors at a time. This goes on for many years. Finally, this news reaches the ears of Beowulf, a man with superhuman strength and courage, living in the land of the gods. He goes to help Hrothgar. Hrothgar welcomes him warmly and gives a grand feast in his honor. As night falls, Beowulf and his friends were left in the hall. After some period of silence, Grendel attacks them and devours one of the companions of Beowulf. Then a fierce fight begins between Grendel and Beowulf. He manages to wrench off a shoulder of Grendel. Grendel retreats in pain. In the morning, when the Danes see the huge arm of Grendel hanging with its terrible claws on the crossbeam over the king's seat, they praise Beowulf for his heroism. But there was something more to come. When night falls, Grendel's mother comes to take revenge of her son's terrible plight. She comes, creates havoc, carries off one so-called Askir, the king's friend and his chief counselor. Beowulf plunges all alone into the sea to fight Grendel's mother. A desperate fight begins, and at the end, Beowulf manages to kill her with the help of a magic sword. He sees the dead body of Grendel in the cave and cuts off the head. Taking the head of Grendel, he swims back and finds his faithful friend still waiting for him. The king and the people congratulate and thank Beowulf for his heroism, and the king rewards Beowulf with rich gifts. He returns home. After a few years, he becomes the king of his place. And here we find another story beginning. That's the story of a fire-spitting dragon. His country is attacked by a fire-spitting dragon. The dragon is furious because some jewels are stolen which it had been guarding for 300 years. Beowulf tells the dragon that his citizens had done nothing wrong in stealing because the treasure belongs to his kingdom and to his people. A mortal combat begins between Beowulf and the dragon. Beowulf is mortally wounded, but with the help of Wiglaf, his faithful friend, he manages to kill the dragon. Beowulf also dies in this battle, and his body is burnt in a great pyre. A huge barrow is constructed over the remains of the pyre. He is really projected as a hero who gave his life in order to save the life of his citizens. Now let's move over to another section. Is Beowulf an epic? Well, there is a sharp controversy regarding this. Whatever be the case, we cannot deny certain epical qualities in it, which leads us to say that it is epical. It contains the unity of design, which is one of the great qualities of an epic. There is a perfect unity in the first part of the epic, which deals with the narrative of Beowulf's expedition, his return to the land of the gods, and his report of the whole adventure to King Hygelac. It contains another great epic quality, which is choric quality. Choric quality means that an epic should serve as the mouthpiece of an age, a religion, or nation, and not merely of its author. We find historical allusions in plenty. Beowulf is full of all sorts of references and allusions to the great event, to the fortunes of kings of nations, which seems to come in naturally, as if the poet had all this in his mind. Here we also come across certain epic conventions such as prologue, the description of a long and dangerous journey undertaken by the hero or some other person, and the introduction of the scenes of athletic competitions and games. Thus Beowulf opens with a prologue in a true epic manner. It contains the description of the fearful and dangerous journey he undertakes to reach the dwelling place of Grendel's mother. It also contains the reference to the swimming competition Beowulf had with Breca, his rival. The language itself is epical. As in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, Beowulf is characterized by formality, dignity, and vigorousness of speeches, the deliberate choice of variation of phrases. For example, various phrases that we find for Grendel's mother, the massing of detail and elaboration of descriptions. In Beowulf, we find the ideals of the heroic age being reflected, the deeds of courage, thirst for fame, generosity of rulers, endurance, the solemn boasting of warriors before and after the performance, court life, the interest in genealogies, the pride in a noble heredity, etc. are being highlighted. Finally, we can conclude by saying that Beowulf has an epic quality. Stopford Brooke has commented like this, quote, Beowulf has an epic quality in this, that the purification of the hero, the development of his character to perfection. When he reappears after a long silence, he still has the same courage, heroism, and moral dignity as before. But now he has become wiser and nobler than before with the waning of his physical strength. He has become the father of his people, the image of a great and worthy king. Finally, he dies for the sake of his people and earns undying fame. Unquote. Brooke says, the moral triumph is attained and fate, not Beowulf, is really conquered in the contest. I would like to end my lecture here. Thank you.
This and other episodes of Radio EduPods, Radio for Learning, are available on Listen to My Radio app at 6 p.m. from Monday to Friday and at 6 a.m. from Tuesday to Saturday. All episodes are available on Salesian TV YouTube channel. Share, like and subscribe Salesian TV, the ultimate learning resource channel.